If we are going to attempt as a nation to prevent mass killings, and mass killings by firearms, which is by far the most of them, then we also have to prepare our populace. We take it for granted, I think, that law enforcement will be there to save us, to assist us. We have to work more closely with law enforcement. We have to be involved from the beginning. There is a tendency in this country, I think, to often say, I don't want to get involved. And yet it's the opposite mindset that made this country great, and that's the one we've got to go back to. If you see something, say something, the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, tells us. It sounds trite, but look at the underlying premise there, that you as a human being will have a primal instinct that something just doesn't feel right. You then, as a rational thinker, will say, why doesn't this seem right to me? And then you, as a citizen of this country, will report it. Maybe just by 911. That's okay. 911 centers will take information, even if there's not a crime, and they will then send that information to the nearest intelligence collection agency. It is probably your local law enforcement agency. Probably at the local level, definitely at the state level. And they will collect and assess and analyze that information. That's what we have to do if we're going to start having any possibility of limiting the number of terror attacks and other mass killings in this country. The second point I would say is that we have to have greater electronic surveillance. This individual came to the attention of the FBI because of comments made by his coworkers. They said something. The FBI then goes and reviews his social media. Social media is open to the public for the most part. Otherwise, it takes a warrant to look at it. But either way, they will either with a judicial oversight or without will have that access to that social media and sort of review what's going on there. We have to accept that social media surveillance is the norm. Some suggest that it is not. You're aware of the famous FBI versus Apple discussion or issue that's going on. But I'd suggest to you that if we are truly interested in preventing these attacks, then we have to that law enforcement has to have the ability to do social media surveillance. It has to be built in at some point, especially when there's time for a court order. It makes nothing but sense to do that. And then finally, we have to be looking out for our neighbors. Again, all of these points are sort of how do we change as a society to say, okay, if we're going to accept that a terror act is going to occur in this country through individuals who are self-radicalized as opposed to have come here from another country and there are more opportunities to intercept them. But when it's kids, and this kid in Orlando was born in the United States, when we have homegrown kids who then turn to some radical ideology based upon what they see or hear on some form of social media or other internet source, we have to be prepared to take certain steps. And that is, if something's odd about somebody, then we should look at it. And there are signs of active shooters that we should be aware of. There is a period of time where they become withdrawn, where they may express anger towards a certain group, as this individual did, where their activity, their daily routine may change. You may just write those things off, but if you see those kind of signs, that needs to be expressed to law enforcement as well, because you don't know, but law enforcement may already be looking at an individual and wondering whether or not this is somebody who is just carrying an ideology which is constitutionally protected in this country, or whether they're carrying out an ideology with some violent means, which certainly is not.